But in 2018, when I went to take my daughter to college, we went to a Caribbean restaurant. And I told the woman when I went in, I said, hey, I said, what kind of Caribbean restaurant is it? She said, Jamaican. And I said, okay. I said, well, I'm an American Nigerian. She said, well, were you born in Nigeria? I said, no. She said, were your parents born in Nigeria? I said, no. She said, then you're not Nigerian. I said, well, look, here's the thing. When you know who you are, it doesn't matter what anyone else says. I said, but what are you? She said, I'm Jamaican, man. I'm Jamaican, man. I am Jamaican. Hand held high in the air. When she finished, okay. I said, so you're Jamaican? She said, yes. I said, so you know Jamaican food? She said, yes. I said, you know Jamaican culture? She said, yes. I said, Jamaica is a country, but what is your tribe?
You are now listening to the podcast where authors inspire listeners to become authors, the Going North Podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer, best-selling author, and book enthusiast, DomBrightmon. And you're going to be listening to a different author that will inspire you to join the business of immortality, known as authorship. Now let the fun begin. Today's episode is sponsored by both books, Going North, Tips and Techniques to Advance Yourself, and the follow-up bestseller, Stay the Course, The Elite Performer's 7 Secret Keys to Sustainable Success. Head over to Amazon.com, pick up both books. They are available in a trifecta of paperback, audio, and ebook. Cop all three of both and be on the lookout for another book from yours truly to help podcasters succeed. Now let's get on with today's episode. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as the wonderful Going North podcast, we got another super special, awesome human for you today, courtesy of one of the best websites known to man in 2023 and beyond, known as podmatch.com, the wonderful site where podcast guests get to connect with podcast hosts. And if they're cool, they're freaking in it. Today's guest is cooler than 2 cucumbers indeed, because we got one heck of a treat for you today, my friends, because we got a fellow child of the king, baby. That's right, indeed. A fellow author who's put pen to paper and joined the business of immortality known as authorship. And not only that, he's also a wonderful husband, as well as a financial advisor and a visceral connections coach. So we'll have to ask him more about that wonderful title. So let's give it up for the RK to the E to the A, the wonderful King Richard himself, Richard Kweku EzeAgu Akinyemi. How you doing, King Rich? How you feeling?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir? Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Yes, indeed. It's great to have you on, indeed. It's right, indeed. We saw your profile. I'm like, yeah, that's right, indeed. Gotta find my people. I usually tell folks if someone yawns, that's the song of my people, because we have to yawn with them by default after a few moments.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. But hey, as you know, all introductions don't share the whole story. They probably forget a whole bunch of cavities. So mind filling in any I may have missed about you that make you the Richard that you are today?
Well, my full name, I legally changed my name when I found out what's hidden in my DNA. So when I went to Nigeria in 2013, I was told by the people, the Igbos told me that I was Igbo. They asked me if I was Nigerian. I was like, well, I don't know. Slavery thing happened. Have to get some DNA done. And then there was a beverage manager at the Abeto Hotel in Abuja, and he said, you are an Igbo man. I tell you, you're an Igbo. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, well, how do you know? He said, you look like an Igbo. He said, if you were to not open your mouth and I didn't hear your accent, I would think that you were raised here. You look like an Igbo. And then later on in the trip, person who's Yoruba asked me, and they said, are you Nigerian? Same question. And I gave them the same answer. And they said, I believe you are a Yoruba. You have Yoruba features. So then when I came home and did a DNA test, I found out that they were correct. I am, on my father's side, I am Igbo and Yoruba. And on my mother's side, I'm Ghanaian Fanti. So I legally changed my name to reflect the people groups that I had not known for so long that I now have found out. So it's like my revelation day. And so Kweku is Fanti of Ghana for Wednesday born. EzeAgu is Igbo of Nigeria, and it means King of Lions. And Akinyemi is Yoruba of Nigeria also, and it means warrior king well suited to power. So Richard Kweku EzeAgu Akinyemi, and I have a passion to connect all of the disconnected because I look at it like the great analogy that I think is the full moon. We love the full moon. We go out, songs are sung about it, you know. But have you ever thought that when you look at that full moon, there's another side just as big that is in the dark? It's the dark side of the moon. We don't see it, the dark of the moon. Well, just like the full moon, we African Americans have a wonderful, rich culture that's been copied all over the world. Okay, aspects of our culture have literally been copied all over the world. But there's a side just as big as that rich culture that we don't know, you know, but through no fault of our own, we don't know what is the connection in our DNA. We don't know what people group we fit in until we take the kind of steps that I took. And because it has so enriched my life, I wanted to write the book, Found My People, to tell people not only about my story, but also about how they too, it's like a guide for them if they want to do it as well, to make that connection. Because it is my goal to help millions of us connect back to the ancestral roots and culture in our DNA, because the blood doesn't lie. There's whole cultures, there's 3 different cultures that I was connected to that I knew nothing about for decades and decades and decades. And now I am learning about all 3 of these cultures, and it has greatly enriched my life.
Ah, beautiful indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. It's a beautiful thing that you actually went out and confirmed what other folks said to you, because it's like they could have been like, "Hey, you know what? I think you're Ghanaian." It's like, "Oh, for real?"
Right.
Like, "Yeah, you're Ghanaian." It's like, "You know what? Nah, let me check this out." Indeed. So, was the process like for the DNA? Did you do the 23andMe, or was it another test that you tried out to trace your roots?
I actually recommend for melanated people to do African ancestry. The reason why is because they are one of the only ones that I know of. I think there's another one, but they will not keep your DNA. At
Uh,
least at last I heard. I'm not a spokesperson for the company, so do your research. But as far as I know, they will not keep your DNA, and you get your tribe because I just recently heard Shannon Sharp that he said that he found out he was 90 something percent Nigerian, which means he took what's called the country test. Because one of the big questions people ask all the time is, are these DNA tests accurate? And I can tell them, in my case, well, they just confirmed what I was already told. So mine was definitely accurate. And then I did a video on YouTube just to kind of answer that question for people at the Embrace Your DNA Greatness channel. So if they go to YouTube, Embrace Your DNA Greatness channel, they'll see that video on are DNA tests accurate. That's what the video is. So in my case, I can say it was definitely accurate. But if they use African ancestry, they will be able to get their tribe, because you have to know the tribe to really connect to culture. Now, just like that example I gave you, if Shannon is listening to your podcast, get in touch with me, because you got the one that's country, and that's great, but there's over 200 some tribes in Nigeria, and each one has a particular culture. I have the Igbo and the Yoruba, and I'm learning both of them have distinctly different cultures. So
wow.
you got to go one more time. You got to dip in the pool one more time, Shannon, one more time, just to find out what the tribes are. Then you can connect, do some research, connect. And so I think it will be the Revelation Day, because he's had a partial Revelation Day, but now he needs to get the full Revelation Day if he really wants to connect to the culture. And I highly recommend people do that.
Hey, that's what I'm talking about, indeed, and solid intel, indeed, because it's like, yeah, there's a lot of tribes, but it's like, wow, I didn't know. What was it, 200 in Nigeria alone, right?
Over 200. There's over 200 tribes in Nigeria.
Wow.
Now I only know a few of them. I know the biggest 3 are the Hausa, which is kind of in the north, the Yoruba, which is the southwest, and then the Igbo, which is the southeast. Those are 3 of the largest, but there are so many other tribes. I just know a handful.
Wow. Yeah, because sounds like you might need 2 lifetimes to try to get all the information about just Nigeria alone. if you wanted to go with just that route. My goodness.
Over 200 million people, and it's the largest melanated run country in the world. It's also known as the Jewel of Africa. Now, I like Nigeria, of course, because my people are there, but I also like Ghana because my people are there too. And I can say Ghana is a very good country as well. And there are many others. I just don't know them. So I can't, I'm not saying anything bad about any other countries. I'm just saying the ones I know.
Hey, I get you, man, but some folks
I don't want them to come for me when they hear the podcast. I don't want to say, hey, what about Ethiopia? What about Kenya? You know, South Africa. I mean, those are all great countries too, I'm sure.
There you go. And you got to love the honesty and authenticity.
Had to protect myself a little bit there, you know.
I don't blame you. Sure, 200 tribes in Nigeria. It's like, man, how many tribes are in the other parts of Africa? Because there's so much in Africa. I guess that's why so many folks are pillaging it.
54 countries. That's right. 54 countries. It's the largest continent. It's really, really something. I plan to travel around Africa. I really do.
That's what I'm talking about, indeed. And it sounds beautiful. So, my goodness, what was it like putting this book together after having that trip and then doing the testing to confirm the truth? Like, what was the process like for finally getting your book published, my man?
Well, that's a great question. It was actually 10 years in the making, and several of those years I was kicking myself for not having it done yet, because there are other people I know that said, hey, they're going to write a book. They heard me say I was going to write a book, and then they had written their books and published their books, and my book wasn't published, so I was kind of feeling bad about that until 2018. That's like 5 years later. But in 2018, when I went to take my daughter to college, we went to a Caribbean restaurant. And this is in the book, actually. And I told the woman when I went in, I said, hey, I said, what kind of Caribbean restaurant is it? She said, Jamaican. And I said, okay. I said, well, I'm an American Nigerian. And but I said, there's a place in Atlanta that has great curry. It was, I think it was the curry goat that I wanted. And so she said, oh, Atlanta doesn't have good food. Her mother said Atlanta doesn't have good food. And I said, okay. So then when she took our order, she said, well, were you born in Nigeria? I said, no. She said, were your parents born in Nigeria? I said, no. She said, then you're not Nigerian. I said, well, look, here's the thing. When you know who you are, it doesn't matter what anyone else says. I said, but what are you? She said, I'm Jamaican, man. I'm Jamaican, man. I am Jamaican. Hand held high in the air. When she finished, I'm Jamaican. I said, oh, okay. I said, so you're Jamaican? She said, yes. I said, so you know Jamaican food? She said, yes. I said, you know Jamaican country? She said, yes. I said, Jamaica is a country, but what is your tribe? You could have heard a pin drop. I said, because you see, when you check your DNA, you'll find out that your DNA will not say Jamaica, but it will tell you what people group you came from in Africa. And her mother said, he is correct. I said, I am Nigerian, Igbo, and Yoruba. I said, I know what people groups I belong to. So if you decide to get your DNA done, you can find out too. And then she was at least honest enough to say, you know what? Between the two of us, I see it's me that doesn't know who I am. You see? She so boldly told me that I was not what I said, but I told her, I said, yeah, I'm the kind of person, I don't care what anybody else thinks of me. I know who I am. That's all that matters. They can think what they want to think. It has no bearing at all on me. But I was able to educate her. And it was that point that I saw the book was not supposed to be published yet, because that is in the book. Because people who learn about their ancestral connections and their roots, and if they want to go so far, not everybody's going to do it, but if they want to go so far as I did to change their name, because I consider it nullifying the legacy of enslavement, because most people are not aware of this, but there are over 200 million descendants of the former enslaved in just the North, Central, South America, and the Caribbean. That's 47 million in the United States. It's over 90 million in Brazil. And then all the other area make up the rest of that 70 million. So over 200 million. And this 200 million is not aware of the people group that we connect to on the African continent. This is a tragedy that is as bad as the Holocaust, but for a much, much longer time and affecting much, much greater numbers of people. So it's become normalized where we don't even think about it. We think, hey, this is just the way it is. It's not the way it has to be. There's a culture that is connected to our DNA. We belong to people groups that we don't know about, just like the full moon, the other side. So now I can tell people, because this is the thing, African Americans are the only group that has been called so many names: Negro, Black, African American, colored, right? And now BIPOC. The new thing is BIPOC, Black Indigenous People of Color. That's the new chair. It's like musical chairs. Every few years, we got to sit in a new chair, you know? This is the BIPOC chair. Well, why is that? Marcus Garvey once said that, and I'm paraphrasing for all the Marcus Garveyites out there, a people that are not aware of their history, knowledge, or culture is like a tree without roots. And so, but some people would answer and say, yes, but we have a rich culture, and we do. African Americans have a rich culture. Caribbeans have a rich, Afro-Caribbeans have a rich culture. Afro-Brazilians have, everywhere we've gone, we have built a rich culture that is copied. All of us, including Africans, are copied all over the world. We are the most copied people on the planet. But there's another part that we don't know, right? So we can connect to that. And we need to understand something, that we are exceptional. One of the things I say in the book is, I can prove to you that we're exceptional. And I can prove it with one question. And it's the question the statement I just said. Who are the most copied people on the planet? We are. You don't copy what you don't admire. So that means if you're being copied, just that alone means that you're exceptional. But if you're being copied, and there's been a 500-year negative stereotype told about you that is basically a lie, but everybody knows it. Everybody, wherever you go, they say dark-skinned people are the ones that are least considered, least thought about, discriminated against, and have basically ingrained biases against. But we're also, at the same time, the most copied people. So I tell people, don't listen to what they say. Just watch what they do. If they're copying off of you, that means you're exceptional. And we are extremely exceptional people. So we need to understand that. So that's why I put in the book, #we are exceptional. Let's make it trend. We are exceptional. Notice I did not say superior, because that's the mistake some of our Caucasian brothers and sisters have made, is thinking that they're superior, because superior is always at the expense of someone else, right? When I say I'm superior, that means everybody else is inferior, right? But when you say exceptional, everyone can have some area where they're exceptional. Exceptional is one where we can share being exceptional. You see, I can be exceptional one way, you exceptional podcast host, right? But I might not be an exceptional podcast host, but you could be extremely exceptional podcast host, right? But in another area, I might be exceptional at helping people to connect to their roots. So we're both exceptional, just in our own ways, right? But we as a people, I want us to know that we are not in any way inferior. I know we already know it, but it's always good to have somebody tell you. And the proof is, if we were so inferior, nobody would copy us, because you only copy what you admire. And because we're the most copied people, we are extremely super exceptional. And whoever's listening today, if you're one of the people that are melanated and have heard those negative stereotypes about you, understand today that you are exceptional. Yes, you are. You have something that God has put in you that you are better at than most other people, and maybe everybody. And at least in this area, being you. No one can be you like you. So don't try to copy anybody else. Be your authentic self. If somebody tells you you're not what you say you are, do like I did in the Caribbean restaurant. Say, here's the thing. When you know who you are, it doesn't matter what anybody else says. I know who I am. And then you can bid them a good day. Say goodbye.
Preach. Let's stop talking about preach. That's right, indeed. Hashtag we are exceptional. Let's stop talking about indeed.
We are exceptional. It's true. I'm not
That's
just
right.
saying that to blow smoke. We are exceptional. I mean, if you look at our history, you look at all the things. I'm not just talking about, because people, they go to music, they go to sports. Yes, we're exceptional at that. But the woman who created the 3D was a melanated woman. The traffic light, melanated person. You know, so many inventions. The super soaker, which is a very popular water gun, melanated person. You know, so many some of these very big technologies and things like that. Melanated people have been part of it, and it has been suppressed. But that time is over. That day is over. The people that wanted us to think that we were inferior, that time is gone, because we know who we are now. And we're connecting back and finding out the other side, and we're lighting up that dark side of the moon so that we know. Like now, I don't have to call myself by a continent, because I want you to think about this. African Americans are also the only ones that call themselves by a continent, 54 countries. If you talk to somebody from Europe, they don't say, I'm a European American. They say, I'm a German American, a Spanish American, Italian American, right? If you talk to somebody from the East, they don't say, I'm an Asian American. They say, I'm a Japanese American, I'm a Chinese American, I'm an Indonesian American. But if African Americans say, well, there's 54 countries. But now that I have done my DNA and gone to Africa and had the people tell me, I can tell you for certain what I am. I'm an American, Ghanaian, Nigerian. And I know I'm that, no matter what anybody says, because I tell them this: the blood doesn't lie. Oh, that's another thing I told that young lady in the restaurant. I said, the blood doesn't lie. I said, I am Nigerian Igbo and Yoruba. And then, of course, I found out that I am also Ghanaian Fanti. The blood does not lie. I said, I know who I am, but do you know who you are? There was another person when I was out at the, every year they have the reenactment of the Selma to Montgomery March. And I was there for I think it was the 50th anniversary. And there was a guy, and he said, oh, I know you're not Nigerian. I said, I am Nigerian. I said, but what are you? I said, don't be so concerned about what I am. What are you? Do you know what you are? He didn't know what he was. He's trying to throw off on me because he didn't know what he was. I said, I know who I am, brother. Concentrate on yourself. Do you know who you are? Right? And so he had to be quiet because he didn't know.
Lord. It must be the social media in this vanity age for folks to just walk up on people like that and be like, yeah, you ain't Nigerian. Well, what are you? Man, I don't know, but you ain't that though.
He didn't know. I don't know what I am, but I know you ain't Nigerian. I'm like, okay.
It's a shame, really. It's a shame, really. But hey, hopefully folks take action from moments like that to focus on improving themselves afterwards. Because you're so right. Because there's so much information out there, and there's so much to trace back for a lot of people who decide to go that true path, and really for their self empowerment and self improvement. To be honest, because I'm pretty sure you felt like you got a giant Olympic torch in your hand as soon as you found out that you're part of all those different tribes.
Well, it was surprising. It was really surprising. But I was very happy because my doctor for my primary care position for so many years is Nigerian. And he had started inviting me to the Independence Day celebrations because October 1st is Nigerian Independence Day. And usually on some Saturday in October, if there's Nigerians in your vicinity, they're going to be having a Independence Day celebration. And so I got exposed to the Nigerian food, which is and the Nigerian fashion, the fashion of the Ghanaian women, the Nigerian women, and other African women, second to none. And I always say, in all of these so-called fashion capitals, a lot of what they do, I think, is borrowed or stolen from the Africans, because the African women's fashion is second to none in the world. There's no fashion higher than the African women's fashion, and it's really beautiful. And so when he started inviting me, I learned about the food, I learned about the culture. And then when I went, I think I was going for like 8 years to that. And then I went to Nigeria. And then when they told me that, I was just really excited because here I just, was participating in the culture as an outsider. But then I found out I too am Nigerian. I'm like, oh my goodness. And then, of course, I legally changed my name because, like I said, that was, to me, that's nullifying the legacy of enslavement because most African Americans have English names because our ancestors either took them when they got emancipated from those uh, plantations, or maybe they just decided what their name was going to be, but they always took English names, of course, because they really just had to. They had to survive in this situation. I tell people that wise parents in the United States, melanated parents, they tell their children. I remember my mother telling me when I was like 6 years old, you are Black and you're beautiful, but in this country, you have two strikes against you. And people are not going to like you just because of the color of your skin. They're not going to get to know you. They don't care what kind of personality you have. They don't care how nice you are. They just won't like you because of the color of your skin. It's called racism. And this is a country that has, unfortunately, a lot of racist people. And they just don't like you because of the color of your skin. So you have to know how you're operating. And boy, it didn't take long. That same year, when I was 6 years old, I had my first encounter with racism. And it was Mr. Burke at the Juniper Hill High School in Hartsdale, New York. Mr. Burke, a white teacher, hair slicked back like Elvis, and all the students were running into class, and I was running as well, and he stuck out his foot and tripped me. And I looked back up at him, I'm like, you tripped me. You were running. I said, everybody was running. Well, you just fell. I said, I'm going to tell my dad. I told my father, and I understand because I wasn't in the meeting, but my mother told me that they had a come to the Lord meeting. And after that come to the Lord meeting, the brave Mr. Burke, so brave that he would trip a child, a little 6-year-old child. I didn't have no trouble out of the brave Mr. Burke after that. I had no problem after that. Mm-hmm.
Good enough for him, because my goodness, a child no less. Like, dude, a 6-year-old child tripping them like that.
Well, my mother had warned me, and boy, it didn't take long for me to see that she was right.
You're right about that too, because some folks sometimes they wait a little bit, or at least the earth gives them a little time before they have their first one. It's like, oh nope, you're getting your first warning now, buddy. Here's your first experience. Like, oh Lord.
When you think about it, I've often thought about this as I was a grown man. I think about me as a grown man. I don't care what color the child is. I would never stick out my foot to trip a child intentionally, because I said, to me, the way that I define racism is an emotion that exists outside of rational thought. It's not even rational. It's just an emotion. It's been something that they've been taught, and they don't even look. It's not factual. It's just an emotion that exists outside of rational thought. It's not rational. It's not factual. It's just what's been taught. It's a feeling, and they say, "Hey, this is what it is." And so, they can choose to live their lives that way. But what a miserable person racism must make, because if you see, can you imagine you putting your foot out to trip a 6-year-old child? Can you imagine yourself doing that? I don't care what color they are. I don't care what color. I don't care what anybody said about them. Oh, they're this, they're that. Would you put your foot out to trip a 6-year-old child? And see, obviously, he doesn't know like I know. You reap what you sow. The world says karma's going to come around, but the Bible says you reap what you sow. You see what I'm saying? If you stick your foot out, there's going to be many things that you're going to get tripped up, because one seed doesn't just produce a seed back. One seed produces a stalk with a whole lot of seeds. So I don't know what he got back for that, but he got back. I know, but the first thing was to come to the Lord meeting. And from what I understand, it was not pleasant for him, and it shouldn't have been.
Yeah, exactly. Because just the simple principle, like, of course, the racism aspect is a part of it, but at the same decency as a child, man, like a 6-year-old child tripping over a child, like, dude, what's wrong with you? Like, that's
exactly
just wrong.
As an adult, I've thought about that. I said, wow, how messed up someone has to be to do that to a child. wow, you know, that's a pretty messed up individual.
Definitely indeed. Definitely true indeed. So my goodness, man, since you've been going on a bit of a tour, promoting the wonderful work that you're doing to help folks to find they're wonderful people, is there a question that you wish folks would ask you more often when you're on these interviews?
The question that that's a good, interesting question. I've never had that one. A question that I wish people would ask me more often. Well, I guess the thing that I wish people would ask more often is, how can we best help our brothers and sisters to realize what they're missing? I guess that would be the question. How can we best help our fellow, these 200 million on this side of the globe, not even counting what's on the other side, millions over there too, probably. I don't even know what the numbers are. But how can we help these 200 million? What can we do to help them to realize what they're missing with the dark side of their moon in the analogy? That would be the question, because my goal with Found My People is to help millions of us realize that there is a richness and a life transformation, a revelation day that's waiting for us if we choose to embrace it. Not just with doing the test that gives you what countries, because that's coffee table talk. That's cooler talk. Hey, I found out that I'm 50% Nigerian, 20% England, and 5% from this place called Monrovia. That's cool. That's coffee table or cooler talk. You can't connect to any culture like that. But when you find out, hey, I am of the Igbo people of Nigeria, the Yoruba people of Nigeria, I'm of the Zulu people of South Africa, right? Or I don't know what the tribes are in other places, so I'm just going to talk about the ones I know about the Zulus, or what's those? There's a tribe in Kenya that are so fearsome that the lions, when they see them, they go away from them. I can't remember what their name is, but these are some heavy hitting dudes. The lions are afraid of this tribe. Okay, when the lions see them walking, the lions leave them alone because the lions know they will get skinned and they will be walking around with them on their backs if they mess with them. And I can't remember that tribe right now. They have these beautiful long like blanket robes that they wear, and with their spears, and I can't even remember that. But what I'm saying is, how cool is it to know that, hey, I'm a part of those, the Mandinka tribe or the Zulu tribe or the Igbo, or the people group, because some people say tribe is a negative connotation. So people group. Then you can connect to that culture. You can say, I am, and there's no shadow of doubt. You don't wonder. See, I don't wonder anymore. I know exactly what I am. And so I made my name to reflect all of the culture that's in my DNA. So when someone says my name, Richard Kweku EzeAgu Akinyemi, what they're actually saying is, Richard in English means powerful ruler. So they're saying powerful ruler, born on Wednesday, king of lions, warrior king, well suited to power. And the Yoruba say, you will live up to your name. One of the things that I want to share with you about culture and how rich the African culture is like the Yoruba naming ceremony. When a Yoruba child is born, they will have a naming ceremony. People from the village will gather together, and each family will offer something of economic support to the family, whether it's money, whether it's things from their farm, whatever. They'll give something to help the family, and they'll suggest a name. And the name that they suggest, that family will call that child that name, no matter what the parents call the child. So let's give you an example. Let's say the parents decide it's a daughter. The parents decided to name the daughter Ceci, right? But one of the families called her Wami. Another family called her Oyen. Another family called her Itunu, right? So now little Ceci is going about, and she's going to get old enough after a while that when these other families say, oh, little Wami, you're so beautiful today. Such a ray. How are you doing? right? And then she go a little further, this little person say, oh, Itunu, girl, I just love the outfit you're wearing. It's just so beautiful, right? And then she go a little further, and they say, oh, Wami. And then all of these different names. And so little Ceci's going to be like, well, Mom, why are they calling me Ceci and Wami and Itunu? Why are they calling me these names? And she, oh, my child, when you were born, they were at the naming ceremony. They gave you that name on that day. To them, you will be called that name all your life. So it's like the family has ownership. So one of my friends, who is actually the first female rear admiral in the whole continent of Africa, but Nigeria, she's Nigerian, but she was the first one in Nigeria and the first one in all of Africa. She has 26 names. She's Yoruba. She has 26 names. She knows all the names. So all of these families gave her these names. She knows all these names. So how nurturing is it to be raised up in an environment where all of these families have basically their own ownership? You were born to that family, but to us, you are Wami. To us, you are Itunu. To us, you are, I mean, amazing, right? So that's the thing. That is how rich the culture is. Western culture has nothing to compare to the richness of African culture.
I mean, 26 names, yeah.
26 names, and she knows all of them.
Good thing they're not all required to be on a driver's license. She'd need a whole darn sheet of paper.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
Just to tell you another thing really quickly, when I was in Nigeria, we went to the Nigeria Country Club, the Lagos Country Club. And when we went around the corner, I had to tell everybody to stop because every place I looked, everybody was melanated. Now, I've been to many country clubs in the US, and there might be one or two or three melanated people playing, but most of the melanated people that I've seen anyway were in the grounds or in the kitchen, right? But when I saw this in Lagos, I said, wow. And then I brought back some of the money, Nigerian Naira, and I would show it to people at hotels or in the stores or something like that. I would say, have you ever seen? And so they would take pictures of it. They would put it on Facebook. They want to show their children because it literally has melanated people on the money. And, when I tell Africans this, they say, well, of course. I said, yes, but you see, you're talking to a people who have been removed. So one of the things this book does for even people who are Africans, who are connected, who do know what their ancestral, it shows them what it's like for someone who has been totally disconnected, who is just finding it. It allows them to perhaps even have a greater appreciation, because I know they appreciate their culture, but even to have a greater appreciation when they see the excitement of somebody who didn't have it, who now has it, and is coming in with the passion. And what they have told me, what Africans have told me, is it really excites them and makes them feel more proud of their heritage because of reading, Found by People and knowing something like that. So one of the most recent comments I've got, the latest comment I got was, this was one of the most inspirational books that they had ever read. So that's foundbypeople.com.
Yeah, sounds good indeed. Sounds good indeed. So you got this wonderful title of Visceral Connections Coach. So my goodness, so what does that mean and what does that entail, man?
A visceral connections coach it's a situation where it's beyond cerebral, it's beyond emotional. I believe it's spiritual, because you've heard people say, well, I went to a certain place and my ancestors were waiting there for me, right? But I believe, after listening to Dr. Joy DeGruy and her work, after listening to what she says, I believe that we carry the ancestors with us in our DNA. I believe that when we get to the place where they had the traumatic experience, like Badagry in Nigeria is the point of no return. When I was in Badagry, the point of no return, I didn't even know I was Nigerian at the time, but I had this visceral experience. I later found out that is the very place that my ancestors, I don't know how many hundreds of years before I stood on that land, but that very same beach, Badagry Beach, is the last place that they stood on the continent of Africa before being taken violently and enslaved and removed from their culture. Okay.
Damn.
And so, of course, it was very emotional. And I've heard so many other people say that. That's why I think a lot of them say, I think my ancestors were waiting for me, but I believe they took the ancestors with them. I think just in the same way that we can pull out a compass and it can always point north because of the magnetic resonance field in the earth, I think our DNA has the ability, just like that compass, to know where it's at. And when it gets back to where it has recorded trauma, this is just my theory, but it gets back to where the trauma is recorded. It's, I mean, how many generations, right? But the same DNA that walked that beach is in you and me. If you, or wherever your ancestors are from, wherever they came from, wherever their point of no return, if it was Ghana, it was Cape Coast. If it was, if it was Nigeria, it was Badagry. When you get back to that place, if you have that kind of experience that you don't know, you're crying, you don't know why you're crying, that's beyond cerebral. That's beyond emotional. It's spiritual. And I believe it is because the place where the trauma happened, now the DNA is back in that place. And it is letting you know, as the carrier of that DNA, that something terrible happened here. And so I help people to decipher that and encourage them to get to the places where they will have that visceral connection. And because to me, that's also key to understanding just how valuable the culture that we lost is, and making us want to get it back.
Good deal. That's what I'm talking about indeed.
VCC, Visceral Connections Coach.
That's right indeed. The VCC, baby. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Because that definitely is illuminating right there. Definitely illuminating right there. Because it makes so much sense indeed, especially when, like, even just hearing folks when they talk about they visit certain plantations and a feeling just comes over them. It's like that's just that DNA, that trauma, just passed down through the generations. Like it's definitely illuminating indeed. So my goodness, man. So with all this wonderful knowledge, you're also a fellow Christian, man. So since you're a fellow Christian, always invite those to share the testimony there. Salvation. Now they came to become a Christ follower, my man. So how was that like for you?
Well, I committed to my life to the Lord at age 14, and then I backslid. And then in 1997, I recommitted my life to the Lord. And I had actually a miraculous recovery in 2019. In 2016, God had given me a prophetic word that he was going to do things to help me to be more strong in the body and supernatural and naturally. I found What the Health, found my What the Health, Forks Over Knives, and those documentaries that talk about, food in the US and eating more healthy and things like that. And so I started doing that. I started eating more healthy. I actually lost 70 pounds. I got more healthy. And then in 2019, I had to get travel injections, and those injections messed with my liver and my kidney, and they made it so that I developed chronic kidney disease, stage 4. In January of 2019, my creatine, which is what tells you what's going on with your kidneys, was 1.2, which is normal. 1.4 or less is normal. But in June, after those injections, it got up to 4.94, which is chronic kidney disease stage 4. Well, the doctor gave me the diagnosis and the prognosis. The diagnosis was that it was chronic kidney disease stage 4, potential liver failure because the liver numbers were way out of whack. And then to top it off, it was like a side order of sepsis, which also could kill me, right? So it's like 3 different ways that I could have possibly been killed. But then she said that the prognosis is you're going to have to be on dialysis for the rest of your life. And after she told me all of this, I said, that's not going to happen. She said, why would you say that? I said, God has made promises to me. He told me in 2016 at a supernatural conference. And by the way, God changed the channel on my TV while I was sleeping so that people are going to think I'm crazy when they say it. They said, what? He changed it? Yes. It was on one channel when I went to sleep. It was on another channel. And the channel was with Dr. Shane Wall of the Feast of the Lord Church in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And he was going to have a supernatural conference. And I just perceived that God wanted me to go to that conference because I know that TV was not on that channel. It was not on that channel when I went to sleep. Okay. I know that. I tell people that to this day. But at any rate, the prophetic word that he gave me faith to know if God told me that then, that he was going to send me out, get ready to travel. That's what he told me. If you're taking dialysis, you can't be traveling like that. Okay. So because God told me that word in 2016, I said, that means he's going to heal me because I can't do what he said I was going to do if what she's telling me now is going to be the truth. Now, I understand it was the situation. I wasn't denying the situation, but I said, God, she said, well, it's impossible. She told me, she said, medical science says it's impossible for your creatine to go down once it's achieved whatever level. It's impossible for it to go down significantly. Okay, maybe a little bit, but not significantly. She said, you can only maintain if you do the right things with your diet and lifestyle. And I said, with man, it is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. I said, God's going to heal me. I told her, I said, I'm going to make a miraculous recovery. In 5 days, I'm going to walk out of here. I'm going to make a miraculous recovery, and my creatine is going to be back to 1.21. Well, in 5 days, I did walk out of there. Even the doctor said in the notes, and I have the records, that it was a remarkable recovery, but my creatine wasn't down to 1.21, but it had dropped 1.5 down to 3.4. It went from 4.94 to 3.4. But she said even that was remarkable because she said, as she told me, it doesn't usually go down significantly. And in 5 days, it went from, down 1.5. Now, it took 3 years, but I can tell you today, by the grace of God, hallelujah to the Lord, I am a living, breathing, walking example of the miracle power of God. Because if no one has ever seen a miracle, if they say, well, I've never seen a miracle. I've never, I've heard there are miracles, but I've never seen a miracle. I can tell you that I am a miracle because I would be dead right now if it was not for the healing power of God and my faith in him. But I also need to say for people out there, I didn't just, go home and drink sodas and eat chips and get, big fatty meals and get pizzas and all that stuff and say that God's going to heal me. Now, I might have had some pizza every now and then, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't like my regular thing. I cut out fast food completely. My chopping board and my sharp knife, they got used all the time because I made fresh meal, and I love to cook anyway. So I, used vegetables, fresh meals. I learned about drinking green tea and lemon juice, which is high alkaline. So I would make my body high alkaline. There's this chart that I got, I put on my refrigerator. It shows me the pH, which is the high alkaline and the acidity. I learned that cancer likes acidic body. And if you do high alkaline, cancer cannot live in an alkaline body. If you make your body high alkaline, cancer's like, it's packing its bags. It's like, you don't whoop this behind. It's like, this man has come to ball. He's come to play. He's not going to play with me, right? He's not going to make me comfortable. No. See, if somebody's got cancer, they drinking soda and sugar and stuff like that, they're just feeding it. Cancer's in the body singing, celebrate good times, come on. No, don't do that. Do the opposite. You do high alkaline. High alkaline starves all of those things, I'm just going to talk about for me because I'm not a medical doctor, right? But you not only check with your doctor, but check with your naturally trained doctor because so many doctors are not trained in the natural things, okay? So I learned about the natural. I went totally organic. I said, I'm going to give my body as much help as I can give it, right? So I went I would drink at least a half gallon of green tea a day. Half gallon of green tea and lime juice. I like lime juice better than lemon juice. So I would get lime, unless the prices of lime really went up in the off season, then I would switch to lemons until it got back down, and I would switch to limes. So that's high alkaline. And by doing that and proper hydration, high alkaline, and then I would, I learned about having the Himalayan sea salt, put a little bit of that in your water to give you those minerals, because actually proper hydration requires those minerals as well. You could drink a whole lot of water without those minerals, and you're not really being properly hydrated. Watermelon actually hydrates even more than regular water. So I learned about all these things. I was doing research on YouTube. I encourage people Take control of your health. Do research on YouTube. So I did all of that. So I said, I'm going to do as much as I can, but I was believing God. Because I said, God, you wouldn't have told me that. Numbers 23:19 is my master key verse, one of my master key verses, but it's what I really, really rely on. It says, God is not a man that he should lie, neither is he the son of man that he should repent. Has he said something, and shall he not do it? Has he spoken, and shall he not surely bring it to pass? So I believe that. And I can tell you, I expected to be healed. I am healed. And medical science says it's impossible. That's why I can tell you I am a living, breathing, walking example of the miracle power of God. Hallelujah.
Woo! Amen to that. Hallelujah, indeed, because that
Amen.
is huge. That is huge, indeed. And that my man was able to slide back up the hill, back to where he belongs, in the presence of God right there. So indeed, who knows? May not have gotten that healing you if you didn't.
It had to happen because I said, I can't do what God said. I looked at it this way. I said, God knew what was going to happen now because he knows everything. One of his names is Jehovah Shaphat. Jehovah Shaphat literally means the all-knowing God, right? I said, he knows everything, and he's also Jehovah Shammah, every place at the same time. That means he's in the future. So he knew when he told me in 2016 that I was going to be there 3 years to the month on the bed in Nigeria, because it was after I got to Nigeria that I found out. And in the hospital, like this, I spent 1 day out of the hospital, then I was in the hospital, and then 1 day out of that. So on the whole time I was there, I was 2 days out, and all the rest of the day was in the hospital because I had to leave early and come back early. God knew. I said, if God knew this was going to happen, then he's going to heal me, because I can't do what he said if what she says is true. And what she says is true, but then we have to go beyond the man, beyond the natural, beyond the realm of man into the supernatural, because that's the only way that I'm going to be able to do what he said. And if he said it, he doesn't lie. He wasn't going to play with me and say, you're going to do this, and then this is going to happen. You don't do it. I said, God does not lie. If he said I was going to do that, that's what I'm going to do. So anything that's a roadblock in the way means it's going to have to move out of the way, because I am going to do what he said I'm going to do. He does not lie. So that means that this thing, although you said man says it's impossible, I believe it, but with God, all things are possible. And I thank God for changing my channel that night, because that prophetic word, if I had not received that word, my faith might not have been at the level where I could have received my healing. So I thank God for changing my channel and getting me up there with Apostle Shane Wall. But it was Pastor Hayward John that gave me that word. Pastor Hayward John in the Feast of the Lord Church in June of 2016. I will never forget.
There we go. That's right, indeed. Gotta love that one line. I thank God for changing my channel. That's right,
Amen.
indeed. That's the one liner right there, indeed. It's a good one indeed. And well, speaking of changing channels, and my man talking about alkaline meals, keep the body alkaline. Your book, your fabulous book, if your wonderful book, Found My People, how connecting to my ancestral roots enriched my life and can do the same for you. If that book were a food, what would it be and why?
Oh, if it were a food, that's actually one of the most unique questions I've ever gotten. But I am ready for that question. If this book was a food, it would be West African, Nigerian, Igbo, Yoruba, and Fanti of Ghana dishes. Like, for example, it would not just be one, it would be that food group, because in Ghana, one of the most favorite meals is okra soup, banku, and okra stew. If you tell a Ghanaian banku and okra stew and somebody knows how to make it, my fellow, if you like okra, you will love banku and okra stew. Okay, they call it okra for some reason instead of okra in Ghana. In Nigeria, it will be egusi soup and pounded yam. And one of my favorite things in Nigeria is called suya. Suya is little strips. It could be all different kind of meats, but I usually like the strips of beef. And they put a dry rub, a suya rub on it. It's called suya. One of the flavorings is peanut, which is kind of unique because most of us in the West have never had a meat rub that has peanut. ground peanut in it. And so that's one of the unique spices in there. And then they roast it over flame, and it is absolutely delicious. They serve it with chopped raw onions, just kind of big slices of raw onions, as well as cayenne. So you take the suya meat, you dip it in the cayenne pepper. They eat hot food, and you eat it, and it puts your mouth on fire. But what they've learned is raw onion, more than water, raw onion will cut the heat. If you eat raw onion, something about the juices of the onion actually cut the heat down. So you can have something fire hot in your mouth, you eat raw onion, and it calms it down. And so suya. So if my book was a food, it would be these favorite dishes from Nigeria and Ghana. That's what it would be. I can tell you certainly it would be. And on the cover of that book, when people go to the foundmypeople.com website, look at the cover. There are 10 ancient Adinkra symbols. Each one of those symbols means something. So I tell people when they buy the book, contact us on the website and to contact us so that we can send you the Discover the Culture in the cover, because there's hidden meaning in those Adinkra symbols. And you need to get the fact sheet about that when you get the book, because there's deep, deep meaning in the cover of the Found My People book.
Good deal. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Great answer. First answer of its kind on this show for a reason.
It's the first answer. It's the first answer of that kind.
Yes, indeed.
So that's the first time you've asked that question?
No, the first time I've gotten that response with the guy named.
Oh, well, what kind of response do you normally get? What kind of response do you normally get?
Oh, it varies. Some would just say a generic buffet. Some would say pizza. We had one guy say flapper pie, which is like a pie with nothing but cream and a graham cracker like crust or whatever. But yeah, never. Oh, yeah. Apparently, some kind of upper Midwestern thing, like close to Canada somewhere, I think.
Okay.
I guess another reason why I never heard of it.
Well, if this book was a food, there'd be hey, there's so much culture in the book on the cover, because people say, don't judge a book by its cover. But this cover has so much culture in it. There's so much culture in the pages of the book, but there's so much culture on the cover of the book. And I'll just tell you two of the symbols. One of the symbols that you see, that bird across the top and the bottom, that bird is what's called the Sankofa symbol. These are ancient Adinkra symbols, okay? Ancient. The Sankofa means there's no shame in going back and getting that which is at risk of being lost. And our culture that is in our blood that we're not connected to, if we don't, it's at risk of being lost. And so that's why the Sankofa, there's more of that symbol than anything else on that cover, okay? And then over the title, Found My People, you'll see there's 3 symbols that are the same. The symbol within that circle in Ghana is called the G-Yame. It's the most famous Adinkra symbol in the world, okay? It means except for the Lord. And the thing I find so incredible as I've connected to this culture is so many things that I see about us as African Americans are similar to Africans. For example, in the African American community, we say such and such would have happened, but God. Or we know the but God, okay? The GMA symbol is the same thing. We didn't have the symbol. The GMA symbol is except for the Lord. Except such and such would have happened, except for the Lord. I can say I would have been dead in 2019, except GMA, except for the Lord. One of the things they say in Ghana, they say Yame, N-Y-A-M means God. Yame Adon, God's grace. How many times do you hear African Americans say, when you ask how they're doing, they say, oh, everything's going well by the grace of God, right? That's the same thing that the Ghanaians say, Yame Adon. That means by God's grace. They'll say, you say hello, like good morning, mache, etiseng. That means good morning, how are you, right? And then they say, mehoye pa, that means I'm doing very well, yame adon, by the grace of God. Same thing that we're saying, different language, but it's the same thing. We don't have the symbol, they have the symbol, right? But I'm just seeing these kind of similarities. Even in Nigeria, you hear them say, they basically are saying the same thing about the grace of God, and by God's grace, we're doing well, and things like that. Across the generations, even with the separation, there are so many similarities I see like that as I'm connecting back to the culture. That's why I say it's so life enriching. I just was telling my mother about some of these the other day. So life enriching. I mean, there's a revelation day, and that's why I'm so excited. And one of the last things I say in the book is, are you ready for the journey? Are you ready for the journey back to your roots? Let's get back to our roots. Let's connect back to our roots. There's a revelation day, and let me leave it with this: found my people. Okay, I found my people. You can too. There's a people for me and a people for you, like a door that you found in your house that is new, with elaborate furnishings, all belonging to you. A people who will welcome and make you feel new. I've found the people for me. Now find the people for you.
Yes, indeed. That's right, indeed. It's one of them episodes hotter than fish grease, y'all. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. So, my goodness, coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive. And that is, if you were to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again, but you're still in the current year, what advice would you give to yourself?
Oh, the advice I would give to myself is to go to Africa. That's what I'd give to myself. I would say go to Africa, because when I went to Africa, I learned my whole identity. And it was in my 50s when I did that. So as a 25-year-old, I would tell myself, go to Africa. I was like, don't question me. Don't question me. Don't believe the images they show you on TV of grass huts and cows going through houses and bloated children's stomach with flies all covering them. Go to Africa. Because this is the thing. There hasn't been a single trip that I've gone to on Africa. The hotel I stay in when I come to Accra, I see single Caucasian women. Several. Every single time I come to Accra. Single Caucasian women coming to Africa. And we got so many African Americans that are scared to come to Africa. Do you know that Ghana has been rated the most safe country on the continent of Africa? The safest country? You know, where you're not at risk of being shot dead by the police when you're complying. You know, when there's no children being killed in the schools with people with machine guns, you know, and they don't have to teach their children that they're, got two strikes against them and have to work twice as hard to be considered equal from the time that they're born. I mean, from the time they're old enough to understand, like my mother had to do with me. So a lot of us are scared to come. So I would tell myself, don't believe the lies. That's what I would say. Reject the lies of yesterday. Embrace the greatness in your DNA. And another thing I would say, so this is the other thing I would say. The poem that this book, Found My People, is based on, is the poem that God gave me when I was having that visceral experience in Badagry. I talk about it in chapter 1. And it goes like this. It does not matter what they say. There's greatness in your DNA. The proof is in the lies they choose to tell to make themselves feel superior. They point to chaos in different places, but hide what their hands did to bring it about. There is greatness in us, but they don't want it out. I think they know they could not compete if the field were level, and they couldn't cheat. So on they go, lives filled with lies to make pretend and rationalize. They say all is equal. Why do you complain? Pretending that their constant lies have not changed the game and made people perceive just by your skin who should lose and who should win. There are some things you have to know. Don't wait for someone to tell you so. Reject the lies of yesterday. Embrace the greatness in your DNA. That's what I would tell myself And I would say, get your behind to Africa because your future is waiting for you there.
Amen to that with that hot fire right there. That's right indeed. Because, yeah, you're so right. Like a lot of folks, like my goodness, remember listening to some folks who recently like got their passports and whatnot, and even some years ago, they'd be like, man, like y'all gotta travel, black folk, y'all gotta travel, stop watching the news, man, because it ain't like what they saying, man.
That's
Like
right. It is
that's that
so much better.
propaganda.
It's not as modern as the US, but if you look your history, it's because they've been taking the resources out and trying. There's even, do you know there's even a video, I can send it to you because there's a video out on social media, and it's them at a seminar talking about how they need to keep Africa down. Because if they don't keep Africa down, then it's going to be worse for them. So let's not make no mistake. The guy literally says, let's not make no mistake about that. And then he proudly brags about how Africa has the lowest manufacturing on any continent on the planet. And he said, and listen to what he said, we will not allow Africa to rise. That's what he says in this video. I can send it to you. I can send it to you on social media. They literally have a video out on social media where they say that Africa will not be allowed to rise. In other words, still you're not enslaved, but still neo-colonialism, basically. And I say that there's a God that is going to show that they are wrong.
Amen to that. You're so right. Because there's so many folks
Amen.
pillaging the whole continent of Africa, man.
They don't have the
crazy.
final answer.
They
That's
don't.
just
Thank
what
God
they
don't.
want to do, but that's not what's going to happen.
Yes, sir, indeed. Yes, sir, indeed. It's right, indeed. This is one of those episodes you probably got to play 2 and 3 times over, indeed. So, for those, once again, need to keep in contact with you, my man, what's the best way for folks to do so?
All they have to do is go to foundbypeople.com because there's a link if they're in USA and global, a link to a button to hit to purchase your copy there. If you're in Africa, there's one to press to purchase their Okada books in Africa, and then we're on Amazon in the rest of the world. So you can have wherever you are, we have a button, global in USA, and then inside the continent of Africa. So foundmypeople.com. And then we also have a podcast section because after I get this, I'll put it on the website so that they can have the interviews that I do. I just put, the Going North podcast, and I'll put the episode, and they'll be able to click and go to the episode. So there's a podcast section as well. And I'd say send it to your friends too, because help me in my mission to connect millions of us, the descendants of the formerly enslaved. Let us connect back to our roots. Help us to don't just do it. When I tell people when I changed my name, I didn't just do it for myself. I told my sister, how many of my ancestors wanted probably to know and could not find out? The technology didn't exist. Or they might have, they were enslaved, they couldn't go back. And then after that, there was not the money to go back, okay? Now we have the opportunity. Don't just do it for yourself, do it for them too. I did it for not only for myself, but for all the ancestors that might have wanted to. I told my sister, I didn't just change my name for me. It's for all of us. And so it's really deep. It's really deep. So foundbypeople.com is the best way to get in touch because there's the links to my social media and everything like that on foundmypeople.com.
Woohoo! Well, there you have it, folks. Head over to that wonderful site, foundbypeople.com. Cop all the wonderful bonuses as well, so we can learn all sorts of wonderful information and knowledge to empower you as well on your journey. That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. So, my goodness, any parting words before we close up shop?
The only thing that I would say is, please don't let this be just something that you say, hey, that's nice, and then go back to just your regular life. Take time to learn where you are from at your core. Your blood doesn't lie. You are not just an African American. You don't have to have a new name every so many years. you can find out exactly what you are. I tell people I'm an American, Ghanaian, Nigerian because I know that's what I am. I checked my DNA. Find out what you are at the people group level, and then do some research, and then save up some money. Go for at least 14 days to a month. Try to find somebody or a group that's going there and get with them. Don't just go by yourself, and connect back to your culture. You'll be glad you did. You will be glad you did.
If you're hearing this part of the episode, that means you're one cool individual. Thanks a bunch for tuning in, and if you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to share it with at least one other person in your network. Bonus points for 3. And be sure to check out the backlog too while you're at it, because there are hundreds of wonderful episodes to choose from as well.